Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thanks for everyone for coming out tonight. Item 2 on the agenda, a motion for 2A.
Motion to consider approval of updated policy number 09.121, procedure number 09.121, AP.21, early entrance to kindergarten.
Any questions or comments?
I'll be the same, when it's over the same.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. I need a motion for 3A.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Any questions or comments on this item? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Item 3B is discussion of facilities. And we have a couple of folks who have signed up to speak tonight. So we'll get the sort of standard protocol, try to keep it to 5 minutes. And then we would ask that you keep your mask on and just not touch the mic for COVID protocol. So first up, we have Mr. Larry Coyle.
Good evening, appreciate y'all being here tonight and giving everybody a chance. And don't have anything new to say, just want to let you know I'm here, and we all know my views on the matter of school plan. So keep down reopen, 11 if possible. And other than that, that's not all I have to say. That y'all got all the facts and figures. Whether we differ on that or not, I don't know, but that's what I'm here for, just to do what y'all got to say. That you might be on. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Willie Lee.
I'm usually used to Mr. Ford speaking first, to piggyback off him, but I'm glad that he's able to join the board. Everybody knows about where everybody stands, about where everybody goes. Mr. Eubanks, I'm sure you've been feeling a lot of pressure, and apologize for it. If you need to punch me in the face, I'll take it on the chin with a grin if it helps us. Okay. There's basically 2 choices. There's one choice that closes schools, breaks the hearts of community people, breaks the souls of the public, and there's one vote that gives people hope that their voice still matters, and that this isn't just this just isn't run by people that don't care. I hope you can relate to that and appreciate your work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. We don't have anybody else signed up to speak, so we can proceed with discussions from the board. I'll start and say that, of course, it just gives us a little bit of backstory, so I'm sure you know what it is, but, this brought up the facilities committee brought a plan to the board, and the board, voted it down. And sent back to the committee consideration of 2 additional plans. So then the committee considered those additional 2 plans and voted to maintain or keep the same plan or send the same plan back to the board. And then from that point is when this epidemic hit and, the community got shut down and gathered and so forth. So it's been then we had a vacancy on the board. So now that we got that filled, we thought it was important that every voting district is represented at this vote. So we wanted to make sure we got a full board before we proceeded with this matter. So that's what brought us here tonight. And of course, I think everybody knows where I stand. I think that as a member of the LPC, I think there's a lot of work put in. We looked at lots of different scenarios and lots of pros and cons. And this is the best plan, in my view. Where I'm different from Mr. Lee is I don't see it as a vote to crush the community or to not have hope or any of those things. I view it completely differently. I look at this plan from the scope of the entire community, the entire county. And I look at what's going to give the most students the most opportunities and the best facilities. And I think this plan does. And, even the students of Calvary and Lebanon Elementary, if you look at this plan, as I said before, they're going to start off going to an elementary school. If we complete this plan, they're going to start off in an elementary school that is a massive upgrade over what they're currently attending now. They're going to then go to a middle school that's getting a renovation right now. They're then going to go to a brand new 8-9 center. They're then going to go to a high school that's had a major renovation. So they're going to get a facilities upgrade all the way through their experience with the students. Yeah. And if we don't do this plan, then we're going to have to give up something in that scenario. Whether it's the new 8-9 or a very limited, mainly a very limited renovation to the high school. So that's why, I support this plan. I think it's going to benefit all students throughout the whole county, throughout their entire NCPS experience. So that's why I'm going to support this plan, but I'll open the floor to the other board members and guys that wish to make a comment.
I'll go ahead. I don't hate any part of this community. We are all one community working together, whether you say we are or we aren't. I'm for children on Loretti in the county as much as in Whole Cross as I am on Rapids and Dallas. Every child deserves the opportunity to have an education, whether to go from elementary, kindergarten, preschool, all the way up to high school, college, or something else, trade school. Everybody deserves an opportunity to do that. I love my community. I participate in my community in every which way I can. My husband and I both do. We're out there all the time trying to give you support. If I go out of town, I'm giving you support. I talk about Marion County and what it all has to offer. We have a lot to offer. We have a lot of kids. We have a lot of people. We put committees together in order to help make the best decisions there are. And I'm going to stand behind that committee. We fired the first committee because we didn't like what they had come up with. Now we have the second committee. So are we supposed to fire that committee too because we don't like it? I would stand behind the committee, and if we didn't have a committee, I don't know how to really say it. Once you get to have a committee, we're just going to go rogue. So I would stand behind the committee. And if they go out, we knew how it was going to run, according to the Facebook page. But I'm glad you knew because I wasn't sure until I talked to all the committee members. So, yes, I plan on following what the committee has to offer, because I think it's the best plan for every child in our community in order to get it done. Everybody else knows. Larry, I appreciate everything you do. I know you're out there and doing it just as much as anybody. I do the same have a discussion about the merits of each plan individually. I think each of us can make a statement with regard to where we stand on each of these, but I spent a great deal of my time today going down the pros and cons of each plan. And so I'd be more than happy to go through all of those pros and cons individually, but I think we as a board have not had a true opportunity to discuss each of the plans that we have in front of us fully. And I think now is our opportunity to do that. I think I've been very vocal in the way that I feel regarding facilities as well. But I would still like the opportunity to discuss the pros and cons facing us on each of the facilities. Because while I respect the work of the OPT, including you, Brad, I think we could have given more, a greater deal of looking at options 4 and 5. I feel that the guidance from the board on option 3 was quite clear after our March meeting. And so I feel like a great deal more time could have been spent looking at the merits of the other options facing us. And so I'd like us to engage in that conversation.
Okay. Jim or David, have a comment?
I'm open to discussion. I mean, I hate seeing this county kind of divided the way it is, with this. I would love to give every community, every school, everything they want to serve. I would love that, nothing more. Unfortunately, we can't do that, so I'm open to talk to see what we can do to make the best situation possible.
I guess it's on me today. So I'll say it out loud first off. Thanks to Jimmy Higgins. Let's say that out loud for everybody here. Jimmy went to bat for us and we got the money that we need. So we need to say that out loud. Thank you for that. We're in better shape because of that. I don't know if you guys realize this, but I have a stance on this. And it kind of dawned on me that it's a bigger picture whenever I took the oath of office and I had to swear that I've never been involved in a duel. And I had to actually think about calling my brother back when we were 10 years old to be doing that qualified or not. But it got real heavy all of a sudden when I realized there's 3,868 people that are kind of counting on me to do the right thing. And doing the right thing to me is clear as evening inside. Never was it painted a picture that we need such amount for this and such amount for that and the other thing. There was no discussion about closing any of the schools. There was a renovation of Calvary, a renovation of Lebanon Elementary, and we're currently sitting on the LTC submission to close all the schools in the district. And I can tell you that I have numerous, 100+ calls, texts, saying don't do this. And I think my constituents recognize where I stand on that. But I can tell you that 18,000 people in Marion County did not go to the polls to discuss school closure. The message that was sent, that was provided, and the only thing that didn't happen was a huge card handed out to the people going to the public, was to go out there and drum this up, that we need help for our kids. We want to support these kids' education, and we need to do it in this way. It was renovation and renovation, not closure and closure. I'll stand behind any educational footprint that remains the same for Lebanon Elementary and Calvary Elementary is in one form or fashion. So I've sat here for a couple of years and I've seen hundreds of people come through these doors, Lebanon Elementary, middle school, and various other schools that I've been to. And I wish I had a clicker, but I can tell you that hundreds of people have shown up to voice their support for keeping the school open. What I don't understand is I'm still counting on my fingers and toes the number of people that support for closing that. What are those people that are calling me? What are those people voicing those opinions? What are the hundreds of people that offset the hundreds of the boroughs located? So I've been waiting for that opportunity. When I thought I'm sworn into the school board, it's announced, I thought surely that God, somebody is going to call and say, I want to close everything for each day. Not one call, not one time, not one meeting. We've got a global pandemic going on right here, and I'm 6 months into it. And we've probably got another 6 months to go. Back in 2009, where we had an ice storm, we're educationally dealing with the number of kids coming through the school system right now. If we don't think we're going to have a baby boom, and we're going to have to deal with that on open capacity of this school system, then we've got our head in the sand. If we don't recognize that we've got 350 open positions in this county that people are begging to fill at these manufacturing facilities, those people have kids. They can live here or will. We have to have educational capacity to support that. On the backside of the pandemic, that number is just going to grow. If you want to hurt the economic, if you want to hurt the economy of this local economy, walk away from $5 million worth of real estate in Calvary, Lebanon Elementary, and just leave a flight where it sits. We've got $28 million to spend. It's not okay just to throw away $5. I don't know where you guys come from. That's a crap load of money. When it comes to Calvary Elementary, I don't know what they put in the damn water out there, but for 12 or 13 years, they're the highest performing schools in the county with some of the highest teacher to student ratio. I don't know how they do it, but they do. I don't understand rewarding that performance with closing that school. If we lose the faith of the voting public with the message we send for what we have planned for the future, we sure as hell lost a lot more than a couple of schools. It's pretty cool being able to talk forever up here, so Daddy always says I look smarter if I shut up, so I'll turn it over to you guys.
Okay, well. You've got some points or some things that you want to share?
I think with regard to option three, some of the pros are absolutely that it spreads resources across more buildings. You cannot argue that. And on paper, it allows the district to recognize cost savings. I say on paper because the recognition of those cost savings evaporates when we possibly discuss turning Lebanon Elementary School into an early learning center. I think there's potential suggestions for the district with regard to holding on to Calvary and turning that into something else as well. And so if we are not going to take those facilities off of our books by selling them or, well, by selling them, then we as a district don't realize those cost savings. We've also said that we realize cost savings through staff attrition because we certainly don't want to fire anybody. And I think if we are going to pursue a plan that focuses on cost savings, then it is up to us to make the hard decision. Because I don't think we could necessarily wait 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, hearing overlapping staff that hold the same responsibility. So we would absolutely lose a principal, a secretary, a bookkeeper, a librarian, and a janitor at the elementary school level. With the high school and the night academy, there's a wing, but it's still a single building. And so I don't think that we could argue that having 5 administrators in this building with a wing is efficient use of taxpayer resources. So I believe we would lose administrators in this building as well as the librarian because 2 libraries are not on the plan for the night academy. We are combining the library media center. So we would lose a staff person here at the high school and the night academy
trend over and over again. It leaves no room for growth. We are at capacity on day one, and I agree with Mr. Ford that we can absolutely expect an increase in enrollment about 6 to 7 years from now. I looked at the enrollment numbers today, and in response to, I guess, the ice storm, our current sixth grade class has 50 additional students than does our current seventh grade class, and that was a 2-week ice storm. We are in month, whatever, of this pandemic with people being at home. So I do believe we will see an increase in enrollment 6 or 7 years from now. And so my concern is that if we are in a place where we only have 3 elementary schools, will we have the facility capacity to accommodate those students along with the preschoolers? I also don't believe that option 3 allows us any real increase to our preschool capacity. We say that one of our 6 big dreams is universal preschool. And I am all for early learning, universal preschool for every 3 and 4-year-old out there. I am concerned about us not increasing our preschool capacity with this option. I think COVID-19 will also have an impact there, and that we are looking at a potential childcare early learning crisis. Because I haven't had conversations with our childcare providers or our early learning providers or our partners in the universal preschool across the country. But do we know how long they can stay open or how long they can avoid permanent closure without additional help from the government? And so that's a concern as well, that we do not increase our early learning capacity with option number 3. So while I agree with you that it spreads resources across more buildings and it potentially allows us to recognize cost savings if we get rid of those buildings and we eliminate that overlap. But if we don't do those things, then what is the true support for this plan? It's centered around cost savings, it's centered around the spreading of resources. If we don't recognize those cost savings, or don't realize those cost savings through additional action, then what have we done? Those are kind of.
So if we added this up, if we use this LES, early childhood idea, then that would solve for that piece of it.
It would, but we would not recognize the savings from eliminating that building. We would still be carrying that facility. We would still be carrying the cost of that facility.
Right, but potentially our savings would be utilizing that, so then it would be an enhancement to what we're offering.
It would be. But we would also have to invest resources into that building to renovate it to serve a population that it's not currently serving. And so we see from option 5A to renovate Lebanon Elementary School to become an early learning center that takes investment of funds potential as well. I don't know that the room is there for an option 3 plus early learning center to renovate, do all of the renovations that we need, and then also renovate Lebanon Elementary School to become an early learning. And my children, my 2 youngest, will go through Blacktop Elementary School. My oldest is already at middle. But they'll go through Blacktop Elementary School, and so my concern with regard to that facility as well as West Marion is that will only have enough funding potential to invest in those schools to make room for the additional 50 to 75 additional students that will need to go there with this elementary consolidation. Because in the Blacktop plan, we are not touching the cafeteria. We're upgrading the ventilation hood in the kitchen, but we're not expanding the kitchen. In reality, we'll add some classrooms, we will add some bathrooms. But I've been at that school during like with mom and so much with dad. It's a nightmare, a parking nightmare, a hallway nightmare. Certain nights we need to look forward to doing all this. Pandemic is still impacting us because there's no way to move through those facilities. And so while I can appreciate trying to optimize and expand our preschool capacity, our capacity is stretched to the limit in our other buildings. I mean, West Marion isn't getting that much either. They'll get some additional space, but they won't, I mean, West Marion's big problem is the dinner cafeteria. Now, that's not, don't believe that that's gonna be impacted. Right. So the big issues at West Marion and Blacktop Elementary School aren't being addressed with option 3 and are being exacerbated by adding 50 to 75 additional students a year.
At current student level.
Right.
And if I can wrap you in on that particular bit of information, if we do need additional bonding in the next 5 to 7 years, we probably don't want to public about it, or don't need to go out and talk about a nickel tax, because I don't think the public get it right now.
So what's your pros and cons of the other one?
The pros on option 4, it allows for growth potential, absolutely. It allows us, room to increase our capacity across preschool through 5th grade. I would anticipate that with the new Calhoun Elementary School, we would add preschool classrooms, so that the children in that community can attend preschool in that building. I think a huge part of preschool can be acclimating to the building. So it's important for kids that go to preschool at West Marion or Blacktop or Lebanon Elementary School to be there in that space, because they get to go to the cafeteria that they're gonna go to, they get to go down the hallways that they're gonna be in. They're getting not only early education, but they're also getting that comfort level and building that comfort level with their space. So it does, option 4 does expand our preschool capacity. And honestly, it does honor community feedback. I echo what Mr. Ford said, starting with the public forum that I organized at Floral Hall 2 years ago, 3 years ago, holy cow, 3 years ago. The overwhelming consensus in that room was against closure. The overwhelming consensus at every public forum that we have seen has been against closure. And so option 4
Not to interrupt you,
honors community feedback.
let me ask you a question. Do you feel like that the community would support, or it would be a good idea for us to buy Bradfordville Elementary, Holy Cross Elementary, building Holy Cross, Winslow Loretta, and buy buildings all over the community and have like 7 elementary schools with a couple hundred students?
Let me put that back, hold on, let me flip that hypothetical around. If we're gonna talk about closing Calvary, we're gonna talk about the people savings and closing Lebanon Elementary, then would we not say more about West Marion also? If this is a good thing, and this is a good thing.
But let me finish my point there. My point is, the community feedback, of course, when there's gonna be a closure of a school that's near and dear to a group of people's heart, they're gonna come out and say, I don't want you to do that. Just as those people did in all those other examples. They didn't want that to happen. They fought for it. They said, let's don't do it. But
You can't sit there and pull the heartstrings of the public and put out a sob story that these kids are wallowing in fecal matter at these schools and tell them you need help with the renovations and here's what we're gonna do with the money, and then you turn one hand you ran. That's it. Can't do it.
I mean, I understand that's your position. I mean.
I was there.
I wasn't part of that.
I was there. I've been working on this since 2008.
In 2016 and voiced your support for the nickel tax.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
I
priority
supported,
stated at that time.
I supported the nickel tax because I thought it was a smart move. I don't think I ever came out and said, I support it because I want to renovate Calvary, renovate Lebanon.
You may not have.
I said I supported the nickel tax because I thought it was a smart move to get matching funds from the state to help our school district. I mean, that to me was common sense, you know, to give up a little bit to get matching funds so we can improve our facilities for school. my point about people coming to the forum and saying that they don't want to close the school, I mean, that's understandable. That's happens everywhere. Anytime that you ever close a school, I don't know if there's ever been a situation where a community said, let's do it, let's go ahead and do that.
If 18,000 people showed up in this room and said, we don't want to close it, we're going to follow 18,000 of them.
No, I didn't say that, but I mean, unlike you, I've had tons and tons and tons of people tell me that they think this is a good plan and this is the right thing to do. And, you know, school consolidation has happened over the past 20 or 30, well, ever since we've had school. We went from one-room schoolhouses to community schools to more consolidated. It's just been happening throughout time. Because I believe it makes more sense. It gets more resources to the students, and it provides a better educational opportunity. Now, it may not be in a brick and mortar building that's sitting in a specific location, but it's a more efficient way to provide resources to students. That's my opinion. But I mean, I understand why people would come out and say, don't close the school. But they're always going to say that.
Different story. That's why. They're not pissed about closing the schools. They're pissed about, they were told this is what we were gonna do, and now we're not. That's why they're pissed.
I'm not disagreeing with that, David, but are you suggesting that if there was no nickel campaign?
We have an ethical obligation to follow what we.
But I'm asking this question, if we had no nickel campaign, and the board decided they were gonna close Gallagher Elementary School, do you think people wouldn't be upset about that?
Absolutely.
Sure they would, so.
But you know what happens? One thing that Marion County is damn good at is whenever you ask for help, they raise their hand and volunteer.
I agree.
I'm saying we're one damn county, we need to start acting like it tonight.
Well,
I'm saying we should reject the LPC recommendation on number 3, move forward with number 4 is the best option. Period.
so I interrupted you, Gary, so proceed.
I do agree with Mr. Ford in that we stated priorities were stated publicly by more than just one person. Those priorities were a newer renovated Calvary, a newer renovated Lebanon, and a renovated high school. Those were the priorities stated. I don't believe that our enrollment has changed so much that it would completely turn our priorities on their head.
If we promote
Go back to the cons of option 4, and there are some. Those resources are limited to only 3 buildings in option 4. You're right. They're allocated to Calvary Elementary School, Lebanon Elementary School, and Marion County High School. And the educational impact that I heard stated in LPC meetings was that the addition of a wing at the high school would eliminate block construction. And so, if that is not something that we can overcome in other ways, be it altering the bell schedule at the high school and the night academy to allow for transit that doesn't impede upon instruction time, then absolutely that's a con of option 4. But I do believe that that option matches the priorities that were stated in 2016 when we started this marathon.
So you believe option 4, in option 4, you're talking about expanding early childhood because the buildings are gonna have more space to accommodate.
I think the new Calvary Elementary School will have more preschool, we'll have preschool classrooms, and so we could expand our preschool capacity beyond the 7 classrooms or 8 classrooms that we have now to add 3 additional classrooms at a new Calvary Elementary School.
And wouldn't that also increase cost?
Not necessarily, because preschool classrooms at Glasscock and West Marion are identified on facility plans as a resource.
So we can expand our early childhood program, keeping the 4 elementary school model at literally no additional cost. But if we use the LES building for early childhood, we're gonna use up all the savings that we have from eliminating the building.
I didn't say that we would eliminate all of it, but we certainly would
consolidating the three elementary schools. But it would also be an enhancement to the offerings we're making to the community. But I don't know that we can, if we add services, it's gonna add costs.
We're not adding services, we're adding traffic. And yes, it will add costs, I'm sure.
I mean,
We
we're
general fund to
gonna
pay for those three school instructors.
right,
But again-
we're gonna have the classroom, and we're gonna put two kiddos in there, we're gonna have to hire people to educate them and work with them, so that's, that's, whether they're in this building here or this building over here, the cost, I don't see how the cost is gonna be any, I don't see how it's gonna be that different. If you have X number of preschool classrooms, your operational cost is gonna be very similar, whether they're at Glasgow, Lebanon, Calvary, West Marion, or they're all in one building. Then you're gonna have the operational cost of the upkeep of the building, the facility. But you have that if you kept the core, the same operational cost, with the same board.
Absolutely, and I bring up cost savings as a pros or cons. I recognize that with regard to our staff expenditures with the four elementary school plan, we have four elementary schools right now. So the staff expenditures for, the hit to the general fund and maintaining the elementary school footprint that we have right now, it doesn't change all that much. That's what we have right now.
I mean,
And teachers travel, teachers are allocated according to student enrollment, so teachers are gonna shift depending upon where the children are.
I think for me, one of the big times, for me in that plan is the, very limited, I think you have a very limited amount to allocate to high school education.
What is limited? Find, put a dollar amount on limited.
I would say you're looking at less than
$7 million is not that much money.
Here's where I was at. No, I don't think so.
The last renovation that we did at the high school cost $1.5 million.
Yes, we do.
We did some smart boards, we replaced the windows, we did things like that. $7 million or $6 million would be a significant impact in this building.
We definitely have opportunities.
Most people in the community wouldn't even realize they did, or even if they walk through the building, I don't know, would realize that the building ended.
At $6 or $7 million.
No,
You don't think?
that's a
And
one
again,
point.
the reason that I bring up the $1.5 million is because we have never invested that much money in this building. We never invested $6 or $7 million in this building. So we don't know what a renovation at that level would look like.
I think it'd be a good question for an architect, say, what can you get for $6 or $7 million? What can we do in this building?
I think we could talk to the Glasgow Independent School Board who approved a $6.7 million renovation of their high school and asked what it would take. I don't think that $6 or $7 million invested into this building is anything to do that. Not an option.
A couple things on option four. One, if you look at, one thing, if you look at the plan, on option four, Carver Elementary is roughly $12 million-ish. So we've got listed. Lebanon Elementary would be, renovation would be $4 million-ish. So we would have 10 to 12 million for the high school potentially. For the, I guess, couple of cons I see. One big pro I see with the four schools is in the barrage of text messages that I've received over the last 24 hours. Thank you, Joe. Probably about 9 out of 10 of them had the word promise. I don't know if the word promise was ever used in anything. I can't for certain, but I think it only was implied that this is what we'll do. think, going back on that, we do lose, to the board, we do lose credibility, and that'll be, something going down the line. People forgive, but they don't forget. But going back to the four schools, though, one of the potential clients I see is the four schools is if we have a lower population in schools, wouldn't they give us money per school? We'd be able to do that, potentially for provide the services.
I think the staffing allocation per school would go down. The per student, like the teacher to student ratio would remain the same across the board. We would also be looking at every single elementary school would have the same resources across the board. So while we may be looking at a change in services potentially at Glasscock because the enrollment goes down, that still means that we have an equitable level across all four elementaries.
Yeah, I mean, so you're asking, what was the question?
Just, obviously, if there's less population in school, there's less money allocated to those schools. Another thing, a kind of concern that I have with four schools is we're making a plan for 20, 30 years in a row. We obviously can't predict anything, what that's going to look like. But looking at the long-term population, yes, we're in a pandemic right now. So we'll have a year or two, it's like a blip, we will have a spike. One concern I have is, if our population stays stagnant, which it's done in the past, we have, our population stays the same, but this population is moving around within the county. Would we eventually, be at a higher risk of schools going down in population over time? And then, 20, 30 years, we know if we got to do another nickel tax, we're at this junction again, are we kind of repeating history?
I think 20 years from now, when these bonds are paid off, we will be having these conversations again, only at that point, that Marion will be 15 years old. And it will be the only remaining outlying elementary school. And so I feel like with maintaining that four elementary school footprint, we set the standard in this community to say we value smaller community elementaries. The same can't be said for option 3. It opens the door, we're 20 years from now, for us to be having a closure conversation about what Marion Elementary.
Yeah, to your point, Jim, I agree, and I think I've stated it publicly before, everybody would like to see the community grow and our population grow, but over the last 20 or 30 years, we've probably added 5,000 jobs, and we have seen no population growth. So, I wish that, I wish we would grow 40,000 people, but
I think new constructions are up year to year, and gosh, dang it, 17% year over from last year, and I'm hoping to because I didn't. New constructions are up in Marion. We've got a lot of new construction going on for housing, and that's traditionally been a shortage in Marion County. That's one of the caveats of not moving here, doesn't pay for housing. And I think that is being addressed by a number of different agencies.
as of now, the data doesn't support that we're seeing any growth. And I wish it wasn't like that, because it is.
You don't think we'll see a blip?
Oh, I don't know, we might see the blip. We might see the blip.
It's going to happen.
Making some good assumptions about what folks are doing. But we could.
I think for president, you asked us to do that, didn't you?
I did ask them to increase population, but let's get people here. So far,
Yeah, I do have a question, and I don't want to put y'all on the spot, but there's folks sitting at the front of the room.
I think we.
Do you really think that 2016 legal tax election, if it was promoted that we're going to consolidate the Dagley plan through, you really in your heart of hearts think that all the public in Marion County would vote for it? Do you think the 384 people in the Calvin district vote to vote their school? Do you really think that? Because
I don't know about countywide, I mean, probably not county, no.
I think it would not have passed.
And I don't know, I can tell you from my standpoint, and I don't know, I don't know that it does any good, but we can pull the literature, we can look at the brochures, we can do all that stuff. I was never under the impression that if we pass a special tax, we're gonna renovate Calvary and renovate Lebanon, or build a new Calvary or build a new Lebanon. I was under the impression that we would get additional funding to fix problems or address needs.
No.
But maybe it says it in there, I don't know. I think it uses Lebanon Elementary, the high school, and Calvary to identify there's issues and there's problems, and we need funding to address these.
At these facilities.
Well, it may, but, so, well, it's active, but at these facilities, it means you're not building a new facility, you can renovate a new facility, right?
The key point of it, it's true, if they switch, if we do it this way. It's a fundamental thing for me.
And I understand your position, Dave, I understand it, but I don't think that, I think my responsibility is to do what I think is the best thing we can do with the taxpayer.
And I do too, and this is it, we're playing.
Well, that's your opinion. I don't think it's the best thing, I don't think it's the best use of resources, I don't think it impacts the maximum amount of students, I don't think it potentially gives us tremendous operational savings year after year that can then be used to improve services and programs for students. I don't believe that. I don't believe that you do something because somebody else thinks that that's what was presented.
No, it's not what they think, it's what was presented, and I'm telling you right now, Plan 3.
Well, it's not my vote.
It builds for 15 minutes from now. It addresses the population of today. It gives you no options. It gives the next board zero maneuverability on capacity. And call me a damn optimist, but folks, we got to build capacity.
So
And
you-
can be successful. I
so
don't
are
think
you
you got to
saying-
recognize that.
So Dave, are you suggesting if we build a new school in Gallery, we build it oversized? So
I'm
it's
saying we
road for
build,
road?
Plan 4.
I know, but if you build a school in Gallery, are you gonna build it for the number of students that you intend to enroll there currently? Or are you gonna build it bigger than the number of students you intend to put there this year?
I'm gonna build it.
I'm sorry, I think we could look at building a Calvary. I mean, option 4 says 400 student capacity.
Okay.
I don't know that that capacity is necessary, but I think we could look at building classroom space for enrollment, common spaces for a larger enrollment with room to grow there. And I do know that our economic, our industrial foundation board is focused on growth.
Right.
And while I commend Mr. Lund for the work that he did, I believe that we have an executive director there now who is focused on growth, not only of industry, but also of families.
So why couldn't we do those same things at the current facility? That's under this, why couldn't we build common spaces?
So we're gonna renovate the night academy to hold 500 elementary school children. And we want to leave the option to make it bigger, to hold 6 or 7. That to me is not, it just gets too large.
So building for 400 with the option of going to 500 is okay, but 500 to 600 is got out of line.
400 to 500 we are looking at right now at Blackstock Elementary and West Union. I adore the education that my children have gotten and will get in that building. I'm quite happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is, if you think that the three-school plan allows for no growth, then the forest school plan, you're gonna do one of two things. You're either gonna overbuild to allow for growth, or you're gonna have the option to go back and add later. Either of which you can do with the preschool plan. I mean, I don't see
But
that.
again, you're talking about, I mean, ask the teachers in the room, what is the difference between an elementary school with 400 kids and an elementary school with 600 kids? I've seen it. I have friends who teach over at Taylor County Elementary School. It's big. There's a massive difference between what you see at Glasscock and what you see at Taylor County. So while you're right, you were absolutely right in that we could add more later at the 9 Academy renovated as an elementary school. But I, for one, would not foresee this community supporting an elementary school with 600 or 700 children on paper, not to mention the preschoolers who will actually attend and know.
Anybody else have anything?
Scott, can I say something real quick?
Yes, sir.
2 points. You're right, Mr. Ford. It's a lot of money, regardless if it's $28, $30 million, or what number we. But I think we need to keep in mind too, we don't need to spend down to zero on this on renovation construction, but we do have other facilities with roofs and aging HVAC systems, so we need to be thinking about it as well. So just, the other thing about planning forward that kind of worries me is we talked about this numerous times, is I think the renovation listed on that plan, if you add the renovation to the existing, about 4.2, and the line item for the other is about 4.5.
Right.
So it's about 8.7, or get close to the limit that the states let us renovate without building a new. So they could actually be more expensive if we violate, if they don't approve the renovation of that building. So I just want to look that up.
I think you're absolutely right. I think with regard to the energy needs that we have at every building in our district, I think we can take a really hard look at an guaranteed energy savings project. I know that there's been conversations about that we may not have as much room as we'd like to pursue that option, but I think there are districts all across the state that pursue a guaranteed energy savings project to preserve bonding potential. And so I think the opportunity is there for some savings to take some of our energy-related needs and look at a guaranteed energy savings project on that.
Any other comments?
So the pros to option 5, it signifies a true investment in early learning. If we have a centrally located early learning center, we will have made a significant investment in one of our 6 streams in universal preschool. It maintains the community presence in Calvary and on Main Street, which is an immense concern for members of our community. And it addresses the potential COVID-related childcare and early learning crisis. Again, I say that we do not know what our preschool partners are going to look like after we get to the other side of this pandemic. On the con side, I again say that it doesn't leave us a lot of room for growth because we are still left with 3 elementary schools. So my capacity concern remains. However, preschoolers are taken out of those buildings, out of Glasscock, out of West Marion, out of a new Calvary, and they are in that centrally located early learning center. So while we don't increase enrollment on paper, we do increase enrollment in reality, or the capacity for enrollment. I do think an early learning center would be more expensive to the general fund in the long term. So while we have political candidates and state leadership officials, state legislature officials who are very much in favor of finding a way to fund preschool, we don't currently have funding streams for preschool aside from tuition. And so I think 5A, we would really need to make that investment with general fund money year after year. And I think it's absolutely worthy investment, but it's an investment we would need to make.
Any other comments?
You can't be against going to school early and getting the year earlier. With the current environment, ending last year with online education, and starting this year with online education, there was the potential for remedial work that's going to be necessary. We're well positioned. I mean, props to these guys because I just showed up 15 minutes ago. And administration and staff, I've seen a very cohesive staff, very positive. And a moment's notice was moved to change direction and embrace the change. Having said that, even on our best days, the online education, of course, is not as good as person. I'm one of those guys that as a kid would have sat there and sat in front of some computers. So with that consideration, I think quantified for everybody that it's probably going to be.
Okay, well, there's no further discussion. Just we need a motion, we'll vote on 3C. I move that we consider approval of the recommendation of the district facilities plan by the local plan committee. We'll just do a roll call vote. Yes. I'm sorry.
Can I make a motion that we table this, look at a couple things, perhaps like the energy savings project, look to see what kind of things we can get at a high school renovation. What the money we want to spend, what can that really get us? Look at architects, look at the people. So that, you know, the high school is the focal point. You know, it is the focal point of our district. And if we want to really make a dent in this, I think we need to look and see what will it cost. You know, see what does a $6 million, what could a $6 million, the $10 million renovation. So we can see, you know, that's just my, you know, I don't know what risk before.
So you want to table the vote to get more info on high school renovation, or you talking about total cost of this plan? Or what's left, or what's included in this plan for high school renovation?
Just a high school, like high school renovation in general.
What does this look like? What is $67 million renovation of a high school?
And also, maybe if we can get information on like an energy savings project, we can kind of differentiate. You know, if we allocate X amount of dollars to go here, what kind of bonding money does that free up?
So you're making a motion to table.
I think you all have to review that.
Okay, I'm withdraw my motion. Please see. We will vote on it. James, you make a motion?
I make a motion to table consider approval of the district facility plan, to look at high school, you know, renovation options as well as the energy savings project.
Can we quantify a little bit further with the $7 million project, that way we have a goal or a ballpark, if you will? How long, how long would it take to get this done? Because we're getting kind of old here. One thing that we can honestly say is that everybody that has showed up has shown a substantial amount of passion for the right reason. But I'd like to hurry up just a little bit.
Your time is fine.
Well, I think we could probably reach out to Vasco and see what it looks like there, and then maybe a little more research, not necessarily go visit, but ask them, what are you doing down there?
I can.
Okay, any other discussion?
here tomorrow. So I'm going to be very respectful and he's ready to come back to work. That's when we have that conversation.
So, we just have to correspond on the date and get some information to do it as soon as possible. That's the date. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? So we don't move on to 3D. So we motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Motion to adjourn.